I remained on alone in Petrograd for 2 days after I had seen the children depart, attending to some business. Before leaving for Kiev, I saw the capture by storm of the Lenin headquarters. These were in the ex-palace of the Kishishinka Skaya. The Kishishinskaya, first ballerine of the imperial theaters. It was a large detached palace or villa opposite the fortress of Peter and Paul, and near the Trinity Bridge. One side of the building faced on the street, and one on its own entrance courtyard, while the other sides looked into its charming garden, which made the corner of two streets. A high wall edged these, and where the streets met at the wall's angle stood a small, round summer house, which had been the pulpit used by Lenin and his followers to preach their poisonous doctrines to the Russian world. Lenin had been an exiled nihilist under the old regime and had lived in Switzerland. One of the first measures of the revolution had naturally been the pardoning and repatriation of all the political prisoners and exiles. This was without distinction as to what opinions they held or what their individual reputations were. To everyone's surprise, Lenin returned home directly through Germany. Though he explained he was not allowed to stop or get out at any station, we heard he had been the recipient of every possible attention during his travels in the enemy's country. On his arrival, he at once took possession of Kishishinskaya's palace, which she had abandoned in terror at the first sign of the revolutionary movement. The ballerine protested at her property being requisitioned by the Leninists, but she was intimidated into silence. Daily, Lenin or one of his lieutenants preached their fiery sermons from the little corner summer house and distributed pamphlets to the listeners below on the sidewalks. After a time, the new government having proclaimed complete toleration of all political theories, the orators began to make new converts who, as they demanded the maximum of socialism, took the name of Maximalist, in Russian Bolsheviki, and became a declared party. Though they made no noisy demonstration before the end of April, it was found that certain of their group had German gold coins about them. The government, through its weakness in troops, could not act, though, and Lenin stayed on at the capital, playing his waiting game, talking, working always, especially among the poor. Palovtsev, General Peter Alexandrovich Polovtsev, commander of the Petrograd military district, now in the second uprising, decided the nest of this propaganda must be cleaned out. Suddenly, one evening, he bombarded it with machine guns, took the fortress by storm, and captured about 30 of the plotters. Though not Lenin himself, who had fled into Finland as soon as he had discovered the failure of the uprising. Then documents were even found in the house that showed the Leninists in relationship to the enemy, and German gold was captured there. 6. Although Bolsheviks indisputably received help from the Germans, who supported all anti-war factions in Russia, the so-called German gold documents published by the Provisional Government's Minister of Justice in July with the intent of compromising the Bolsheviks were only business telegrams. I had been dining that evening at the American Embassy. As the town was only superficially quiet, Mr. Francis proposed, when we left about 10 o'clock, to drive another guest and myself home, affording us the protection of his carriage with its American flag. It was still twilight, with a splendid afterglow fading on the horizon and the charm of the soft July sky. This caused the ambassador to say, as we settled into our seats, "It is early yet, and we have all been shut up for so long. I haven't left my desk today. Shall we go round by the quay and admire the river on the way to your hotel, Princess? It is but 10 minutes more drive by that way." I naturally gave an affirmative to reply. British Embassy, Trinity Bridge, Field of Mars, Fortress of St. Peter and Paul, Navy Embankment, Row of Imperial Palaces, la-di-da-di-da-di-da, la-da-da-da-da-da-da. Revolutionary Days on the chapter Kerensky and the Bolsheviki. By some goddamn what? Fucking Cantazucene? Who the hell is Cantazucene? Who the hell is Cantazucene, huh? Who's this Cantazucene you speak about? September 25th, 1899, the ultra-swanky commune of Newport, Rhode Island, summer stronghold of the first families of the East, witnessed a wedding at aristocratic 23-year-old Julia Grant, who was the granddaughter of U.S. Grant, daughter of Brigadier General Frederick Dent Grant. Mrs. Potter Palmer, White House, 1876. The groom 1 year, Julia Sr., was a dapper Russian Prince Michael Cantazucene, a graduate of the Imperial Alexandrine Lyceum, St. Petersburg, cavalry officer of the Imperial Russian Army, decked out for the occasion in his parade whites with red and silver trim, glossy high black boots, and on his head a golden helmet surmounted by an imperial eagle. Prince Michael, whose full title was Prince Cantazucene Count Speransky, was not a prince of the ruling Romanov line, but his credentials were perhaps even more impressive. He was the direct descendant of the 14th century Byzantine Emperor John Cantazucene and the great-grandson of Russia's great statesman Count Michael Speransky. The following day, the young couple was en route to Russia, where Julia would spend most of the next 18 years raising 3 children with the help of numerous domestics and moving in the highest aristocratic circles around the court in St. Petersburg, with respites on the Cantazucene estate of Buramka in the Ukrainian province of Poltava, in the family villa near Yalta in the Crimea, and occasionally in the capitals and watering holes of Europe, while her husband made a brilliant military career for himself. And then came the revolution. Around the corner, around the bend, here it comes, the core of the memoirs presented here, somewhat abridged, covers the Russian years in the life of Princess Cantazucene, Countess Speransky, nee Grant. As chance would have it, they were fateful years for Russia. Julia was not the first Grant to visit Russia. Shortly after his graduation from West Point in 1871, her father, Frederick Dent Grant, accompanied General Sherman on a European tour as his aide-de-camp. From the Near Eastern leg of the tour, he entered Russia through the extreme south, where he was the guest of Grand Duke Michael Nikolaevich, Viceroy of the Caucasus, and then journeyed north across the country to Moscow by carriage and finally by rail to St. Petersburg, where he was a guest in the palace of the Grand Duke's wife. Nor was Julia a provincial American at the time of her marriage. In 1888, her father had been appointed American minister to Austria, so for 5 years, young Julia Grant lived amidst the Austro-Hungarian aristocracy and the International Diplomatic Corps in Vienna. Went to a Viennese finishing school, learned to speak impeccable Viennese German, had a debut at court, was introduced to Emperor Franz Joseph, who was her father's frequent hunting companion, and to the Empress, and danced innumerable evenings away at Vienna's balls with music sometimes provided by Strauss himself. On the way to Vienna, the Grants had been received at the court in London by Queen Victoria. Julia Grant met her future husband, as she recounts in her memoirs, in Rome, at the tail end of a combined grand tour and convalescence journey arranged by her Aunt Bertha for her husband, Potter Palmer. In 1898, Julia, adopted as a kind of surrogate daughter by her aunt, who only had sons of her own, was invited along. In 1870, Potter Palmer